Hello and welcome to today's instalment. This episode is called Money, Money, Money. And why is talking about money so awkward? I mean, us Brits seem to find it especially difficult to talk about finances. Yet, when it comes to fleeing from an abuser, it is the most common reason why women feel they need to stay. And so I'm going to try and take the sting out of this conversation by sharing some, not all, because I'm trying to keep these videos to a sensible length, but by sharing some of my money journey. In my early childhood, I never saw money as a problem, and it appeared to me as though it was easy to come by. My parents are the type that don't talk about it. My dad was a well-paid executive and my mum a trained nurse, but she stayed at home to look after my sister and I. We shopped, we enjoyed great day trips and experienced luxury holidays. We weren't extraordinarily rich, but my parents spent freely and invested in our education at private school, where many of my friends were very, very wealthy. My dad suffered with depression in my teenage years and everything changed. We had to move from our big expensive house and my mum went back to work to pay the bills and enable him to step back from the business he owned and the corporate world that had had such a negative effect on his mental health. Money became an evil that had stolen my dad's health, and since then I have held on to the belief that money is the root of all evil and that capitalism is the work of the devil. After university, I was far from money driven when looking for a job, yet I fell into a well-paid role that had great prospects. However, I didn't feel like I was fulfilling my potential and I desperately wanted to be my own boss. At the same time, I fell in love with my husband and we left our jobs and took on a pub restaurant. As I've shared in previous episodes, it was a successful little business as far as the hospitality industry goes. However, I did the work of two and a lot of our income was spent on staff whilst he did very little in the business. I became used to working a 90 to 100-hour week for peanuts. Work stopped being something I did for money and started to become something I did to survive, to keep a roof over our heads and avoid the abuse in my relationship. After my daughter was born, things became even more difficult financially when I discovered that my husband had hidden huge debts from me. He had been issued with a CCJ, which is a county court judgment and was an order to pay back a debt that he had hidden from me. I went into rescue mode and in a bid to solve the problem, I transferred his debt into my name and paid it off, and I would manage the repayment as I handled all the business finances by this point too. My hatred for money was becoming even more deep-seated. After I left my husband, I was left with huge debts. I'm now in an IVA, which is an individual voluntary agreement with my debtors to pay back an amount that is affordable to me each month. Mr. C was equally as bad with money, equally as abusive, and probably more manipulative, and so the cycle repeated itself. I worked for very little to support his business. I managed every penny to ensure we could afford our bills, and I tried to make every penny count whilst repeating the mantra, money doesn't make you happy, in a bid to convince myself that everything would work out fine in the end. Ultimately, more than my financial circumstances needed to change, and no amount of money would have made me happy once I realised what a controlling and manipulative liar Mr. C was. I've experienced a large spectrum of wealth and spent time with people from all financial backgrounds. Running a restaurant meant I was regularly handling large sums of cash, counting my way through tens of thousands of pounds every week. And then there have been weeks where I've had zero, nothing, not a penny, and spent nights awake and worrying about how we would afford our bills and what we had in the cupboards to eat. I was always blamed for managing the household finances incorrectly, or spending too much money on food, or not attracting enough business on the weeks where the bank balance dwindled to the point of empty. The truth was that when we had it, he spent it. Clothes, beer, holidays, cocaine, weed, and then when we got some more, he'd spend that too. The nature of our business was that large sums came in, and no matter how much I tried to make it stretch to the next invoice, he was always sabotaging my attempts and then using it as a way to undermine my worth in the business by telling me I wasn't doing it good enough. One day, I remember him screaming in a fit of rage, asking where all his money had gone, knowing full well he'd spent it all the night before, whilst I sat by and watched him get more and more intoxicated, waiting for permission from him to go to bed. So when I left, I knew I was leaving with nothing. But the experience of having nothing before meant that I wasn't scared to have nothing this time. I didn't care how much I had, I just couldn't stay with him. And fortunately, I have the most wonderfully supportive parents who, whilst they didn't know the full extent of what was going on in my relationship, have always been there for me no matter what happens. And so today, 1 year ago, I received my first instalment of universal credit. And for the first time in a long time, no one was telling me what to do with it. I felt like I had regained control over my finances, and that was a control I'd left well before even getting married in 2012. Being a people pleaser and believing that money doesn't make you happy is a wicked combination, and it meant that I was all too willing to give over the reins to my purse strings. So regaining control and not only taking responsibility for my finances, but also the responsibility to learn about money in a healthy and positive way. And that has been a true game changer for me. Money mindset and overcoming limiting beliefs around money has really helped me to heal, and facing up to my finances and believing that I am worthy of wealth has put me in good stead for the future and even attracted a miracle or two. But more on that another day. Thank you for listening. I really want to open up the conversation about money to you and would absolutely love it if you would join us in the Facebook group, where we will be discussing money stories, money blocks, and how a date with your finances can be the start of a brand new relationship you didn't know you needed or wanted to have. Confidence is key when it comes to money, so come and join us and keep following the series as over the coming months my money story starts to twist and turn.